Insolvency. What do you mean by insolvency and what do you mean by bankruptcy? Insolvency basically is a term where insolvency states that when a person is not able to pay off its debts, right? His debts, he is unable to pay his debts, his inability to pay his debts will be termed as a situation wherein he becomes an insolvent. Correct? So the term insolvency denotes that the state of one whose assets are insufficient to pay his debts or his general liability to pay his debts. Correct? So he is now not able to pay his debts. Like khali ho chuka hai, like nothing is remaining with him. There are no assets also. Correct? The term insolvency is used in a restricted sense to express the inability to pay his debts as they become due in ordinary course of business. Bankruptcy in further case denotes that a legal status of a person or an entity who cannot repay debts to creditors. The bankruptcy process begins with filing of a petition in a court or before an appropriate authority designated for this purpose. The debtor's assets are then evaluated and used to pay the creditors in accordance with the law. So basically, I am not having liquid funds to pay off my debts. I am in a position, I can be said in a position of being as an insolvent person. Correct? But what is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is something kind of, you are giving a stamp on the person that yes, he is now insolvent or he is bankrupt. Now he is not having anything to pay off his debts. Understood? So this is the scenario over here. Now, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. Let me read it out first and then I'll explain you. The Insolvency Bankruptcy Code Bill was drafted by a specially constituted bankruptcy law firms Reforms Committee BLRC under the Ministry of Finance. The Insolvency Bankruptcy Code was introduced in Lok Sabha on 21st December 2015 and was subsequently referred to the Joint Team of Parliament, and the committee submitted its recommendations, and the modified code was passed by Lok Sabha on 5th May 2016, and the code was passed in Rajya Sabha on 11th May 2016 and received consent. It received assent of the President on 28th May 2016. Correct? So, ये code का basic introduction है. So, when the this particular code was drafted, so this is a code because it involves many of the other acts, I can say, or it is relevant to many other, it is not acquainted to a one particular direction. Okay, so this was particularly drafted by the BLRC, that is the Bankruptcy Law Reform Committee under Ministry of Finance, and it was introduced in 2015, which got final assent of the President on 28th May 2016. The code is named as 2016. Here the act consolidated. So why insolvency and bankruptcy? Pehle kya hota tha? What used to happen is, in case of companies, in case of LLP, in case of partnership firms, or in case of individual, there were so many laws, right? So relating to insolvency or bankruptcy or liquidation, they had to follow the norms of these particular acts. Everything was scattered. So now it was said that insolvent meaning is one for the company, for the individual, for the partnership, or for the LLP. The definition, the term insolvency, correct, is like it denotes whether it doesn't make a difference whether a company or a partnership. If you are insolvent, means you are not able to pay your debts. That's it. So why not club all these regulations? Now it is not clubbing the Companies Act or the LLP Act or anything. It is combining, it is bringing up all the provisions under these acts related to insolvency or winding up in one particular basket. Got the point? So under this code, we have brought the companies, LLPs, partners, individuals, all the people at one place. Understood? And this was done by amending. So the from Companies Act, from LLPs Act, from Partnership Act, these provisions were being removed. Provisions related to insolvency, liquidation, winding up were removed and were incorporated in IBC Act. So now I can say there is one act for all, one code for all. Okay. So section 2 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code as amended by further IBC Amendment 2018 provides that the provisions of this code shall apply to whom shall this IBC code to whom is this applicable. Here I can say it is applicable to a company which is incorporated under the Companies Act 2013 or any previous laws. Correct? So any other company which is governed by the special act, statutory companies I can say, or LLP, or any body corporate formed under any other laws as specified by central government, or personal guarantors to the corporate debtors. So people giving guarantee to corporate debtors, right? We'll see who is a corporate debtor, who is a financial creditor, partnership form, proprietary form, individuals, and in relation to their insolvency, liquidation, voluntary liquidation, bankruptcy, for all of them, this code is applicable. Right? Now, we saw which are the parties to whom this code is applicable, but the main applicability remains is on the basis of the default made by the corporate debtor. Correct? Here, part 2 of the IBC Codes 2016 applies to the matters relating to the insolvency and liquidation of the corporate debtors with minimum amount of default of ₹1 crore. Means, agar unhone repayment mein, if they have made default in repayment of the debt of minimum of ₹1 crore, then they can come under this particular code, that is IBC Code 2016. But, correct? Now this threshold limit of ₹1 crore was increased by wide notification dated 24th March 2020. As I said, why this was increased, I can say that there could be a chaos. Now 24th March 2020, you can understand that this was the period when COVID situation were emerging. So during that period, if I can say the default was 1 lakh, so ऐसे में IBC के पास कितने सारे cases आएंगे? Every individual who is making a default of so and so amount, anyone could have come to or filed a complaint to IBC, filed an application to IBC, correct? So this particular threshold limit was increased to 1 crore rupees. Here, who is an adjudicating authority? As per this code, the adjudicating authority is NCLT. So that applications will be moving to NCLT. Correct? Corporate National Company Law Tribunal. Corporate applicant means a corporate debtor, a member or a partner of a, so I can say a corporate person, right? A corporate debtor, a member or a partner or the corporate debtor who is authorized to make the application for corporate insolvency resolution, that is CIRP process, that is CIRP, that is corporate insolvency resolution process, under the constitutional document for the corporate debtor. So either who will be falling under the definition of corporate applicant, that is the corporate debtor itself, the member or any other partner or corporate debtor who is authorized to make an application on behalf of the this corporate debtor, an individual in case who is in charge of managing the operations or of the corporate debtor, or the person who has a control and supervision of the financial affairs of the corporate debtor. Now I'm speaking the word corporate debtor. Who is a corporate debtor? Corporate person includes a company, a partnership, LLP, correct? These people who have taken money, correct, who owe money to people, so they are debtors, correct? So this will be termed as corporate debtors, and corporate applicant के definition में corporate debtor falls, and in case even corporate debtor can make an application, any other member or partner of the corporate debtor can make an application, or an individual in case if that person is managing all the affairs of the corporate debtor, or the person who is in control of the financial affairs of the company, of the corporate debtor, right? So corporate debtor means a corporate person who owes a debt to any person. Corporate person means, so who all are included in the definition of corporate person? That is a company, a partnership, a LLP, correct? Or any other person incorporated with LLP under the law, limited liability under the law for time being in force. Corporate guarantor means a corporate person who is the surety in case of contract of guarantee to a corporate debtor. So corporate guarantor is a person who had given guarantee for loans, like against loans towards the corporate debtor, correct? You might have learned contract of guarantee in Indian Contract Act, right? So he was acting, any person who is acting as a guarantor towards corporate debtor. Default matlab means non-payment of a debt. Default matlab kya in this particular code? Default is non-payment of debt, right? When whole or part of the installment of any of the debt is due and payable and is not paid by the debtor or the corporate debtor, as the case may be, will be termed as a default, correct? Non-payment of debt, simple. Financial creditor kaun hai? Financial creditor is the person to whom a financial debt is owed. In short, who has provided loans or who has invested. Maybe creditor kaun hai? So whom the money is owed, debt is owed, correct? By any way, he is in connection that to whom the money is owed. Financial debt क्या है? Financial debt देखा ना? So either you have borrowed money from that person, from the financial creditor, or either you have it's like due to issue of bonds or debentures or securities or any kind of borrowings or any kind of agreement, any kind of credit lending, correct? Now, who is an insolvency professional? See, in any of the act or any of the code, the most important thing, as I am saying in the beginning, is the definitions. Once you have to understand the definition, till you don't understand the characters of the story, you won't be understanding the story. If you want to remember the act properly or any code properly, you have to first understand the characters. Define the characters well. Once you understand the characters, you will understand their role in this whole story. Got the point? So insolvency professional kaun hai? Insolvency professional means any person who is enrolled under section 203 with an insolvency professional agency as the member and registered with the board as an insolvency professional under section 207. Means here insolvency professional agency. Now insolvency professional can be a CS, right? And a CS is the member of ICSI, correct? So here ICSI becomes the board, ICSI becomes the insolvency professional agency wherein the insolvency professional is registered. So in this whole process, in this whole insolvency process, resolution process, a insolvency professional has to be hired, correct? Who can be an insolvency professional? A company secretary in practice can be an insolvency professional who has registered, who has been registered under the act, and the board is the insolvency, the agency is the institute that is under which he is a member. We'll see all these details further again. Insolvency resolution process cost. So whatever cost or whatever expense which is incurred during the whole process, that is the amount of interim finance or the cost incurred for raising the finance, fees payable, or the cost incurred for resolution professional for running the business of the corporate debtor, or the cost incurred at the expense of the government to facilitate IRP, or any other cost which is specified by the board will be included in the resolution process cost. Liquidation commencement date. Which date will be termed as the liquidation commencement date is the date on which the proceedings for liquidation commences. What does the liquidation cost means? Any cost which is incurred by the liquidator during the process of liquidation, right? That will be termed as liquidation cost. Liquidator is a person, means insolvency professional appointed as a liquidator. So the insolvency professional who is appointed under the IBC process or the CIRP process will be the liquidator in the liquidation process. Who is a resolution professional? Means an insolvency professional appointed to conduct the CRP. So once you have to appoint an insolvency professional. Insolvency professional can act as a resolution professional also, right? He can be appointed as an interim resolution professional, correct? We'll look into it. Persons who may initiate corporate insolvency resolution process. So who is the person who may initiate the CRP process? That is where any corporate debtor commits a default, right? A financial creditor who can initiate the CRP process. Like, I want this company to, get liquidated or wind up this company. I want my money. Do anything. I have filed an application. So who can initiate CIRP process? CIRP process can be initiated by the corporate debtor who is in default, by a financial creditor, by an operational creditor, or a corporate debtor itself can initiate the CIRP process. Resolution process. So initiation of CIRP by financial creditor under section 7 of the code. A financial creditor, either by itself or jointly with the financial creditors or any person on behalf of the financial creditors, as the case may be, may file application for initiating CIRP process against the corporate debtor before the adjudicating authority. We saw who is an adjudicating authority over here, that is the NCLT, when a default has occurred, right? So a financial creditor, he himself or jointly with other financial creditors, can file a single application requesting for CIRP process. The application is to be filed to the adjudicating officer or authority, sorry. Now, however, with regard to the financial debt in form of securities or deposits, right, wherein in terms of financial debt provide for appointment of trustee or agent to act as an authorized representative for all the financial creditors, or where a financial debt is owed as a class of creditors exceeding the number as the case may be, other than the creditors covered under section 21, an application for initiation of CIRP process against the corporate debtor shall be filed jointly or by not less than, so in case wherein the shareholders, I can say in form of securities, or debenture holders, by trustees or no deposit holders, so in that case, or other creditors, right, financial creditors, in that case they have to either file jointly or not less than 100 of the creditors in the same class, or not less than 10% of the total number of such creditors in the same class, whichever is less, right? So either jointly they can file, or 100 creditors of the same class, or 10%, not less than 10% of the number of the creditors, whichever is low, can be accommodated and can file a application for CIRP. Correct? Now, in case of financial creditor who are allottees under the real estate project, an application for initiating the CIRP process against the corporate debtor shall be filed jointly by not less than 100 of such allottees under the same real estate project, or not less than 10% of the total number of the allottees under the same real estate project, whichever is less. So here in case of real estate project is in case wherein it is related to the construction, correct? So say for example, under the real estate project, you were to be allotted a flat, correct? But still the project is not finished. Project is not complete and you have not been allotted, and already you have paid advances towards your property, correct, gaining that property. So in this regards, when there is a failure, right, or in case where the real estate project is on hold and the money to the allottees are not returned, right? So in this case here, if you see the real estate laws, rules, act, real estate, in that also it is mentioned. Here in this case, you all can file an application for CIRP to the adjudicating authority under IBC code 2016. But at least 10% of the total number or 100, whichever is less, can jointly make an application. A default herein includes a default in respect of financial debt owed not only to the applicant, financial creditor, but to any other financial creditor of the corporate debtor. Understood? So it is not only to the financial debt owed to any of the, or not only to the applicant, financial creditors, but other creditors also. Now, the financial creditor shall, along with the application, furnish a record of the default with the information utility or such other record or evidence of default as the case may be specified. Now in this, the name of the resolution professional proposed to act as an interim resolution professional, and any other information which is to be given. So the financial creditor, while making an application, they have to give the records, the details, the evidences of furnishing the default, right? Proving that the default has been made, and the name of the resolution professional proposed to act as an interim resolution professional. So they can also recommend, they can also give the name of the whom they want to act as a resolution professional, or whom they want to act as a interim resolution professional. In this case further, the adjudicating authority shall, within 14 days of the receipt of the application under subsection evidence furnished by the financial creditor, if the said authority has not ascertained the existence of default and passed any such order within such time, it shall record the reason for the same. Now what happens here, the adjudicating officer has to, within 14 days of the receipt of the application, record, right? Record whether there is a default, right, or no, and if not, they have not recorded in that certain time, they have to give the reason for the delay. Adjudicating officer is satisfied that a default has occurred, right, and the application is complete, right, and there is no disciplinary proceedings pending against the proposed resolution professional, it may by order admit such application. So it can be said that, see, you have to be very professional when you are working under IPC or taking any case under IPC, correct? For or acting as, I can say in short, acting as a resolution professional, because in case of default you can be penalized, correct? Now, when the adjudicating officer will take your matter, that is when he is satisfied that the application is complete in all respects, correct? There is no disciplinary proceedings against the RP, that is resolution professional, and in that case it may order to admit the application, or it will agree to submit the application. The default has not occurred, or the application under subsection 2 is incomplete, or any disciplinary proceedings is pending against the proposed resolution professional, it may order reject such application. So now, in case if, say, for other reasons there is a disciplinary action going on against the resolution professional, in that regards the application won't be accepted and adjudicating authority will order to reject the application. However, before rejection of the application, the AA shall give a notice to the applicant to rectify the defect in the application within 7 days of the receipt of the notice. Okay, so a 7-day time period will be given to the adjudicating authority to give explanation over why the application should not be rejected, correct? Moving further, the corporate insolvency resolution process, that is CIRP, shall commence from the date of admission of the application. So, as stated earlier, when the AA will admit your application, in case when there is no, now everything is clear, the application is complete, there is no proceedings against the disciplinary proceedings against the IRP or RP, correct? So in that regards, it will be deemed to be AA can order to admit your application, and once that order has been passed, or once AA says case admitted, so case admitted, whenever you are going under court, the first is like you have to explain the judge, you have to explain the jury that what is the basis of the case, correct? So once it is clear, then the case would be admitted. The similar manner, this application will be admitted. The adjudicating authority shall communicate the order to the financial creditor and the corporate debtor within 7 days of admission or rejection of such application, as the case may be. So even first initial stages, whether your application will be admitted or rejected, whatever the result is, the adjudicating authority will have to intimate or communicate to the financial creditor and the corporate debtor within 7 days of either admission or rejection, as the case may be. Initiation of CIRP by operational creditor. So an operational creditor may, on the occurrence of a default, deliver a demand notice of unpaid operational debtor, a copy or an invoice demanding payment of the amount involved in the default to the corporate debtor, right? So first he will be delivering a demand notice for the of unpaid amount, right, along with the copy of the invoice. The corporate debtor shall, just give me a moment please. Okay. The corporate debtor shall, within a period of 10 days of the receipt of the demand notice or the copy of invoice, bring to the notice of the operational creditor existence of dispute, if any, or record a pendency of the suit or arbitration proceedings filed before the receipt of such notice or invoice in relation to such dispute, or the payment of unpaid operational debt, or by sending the attested copy of the record or electronic transfer, and by sending any attested copy of the record that the operational creditor has encashed a check issued. So either in this case, if there is due to that any of the dispute, if the suit or proceedings are pending, or with regards to that unpaid operational debt, or in case wherein the creditor has already received the money, correct, or has encashed the money through any check or through any electronic mode, if he has received the money, that acknowledgement will be sent. Demand notice means a notice served by the operational creditor to corporate debtor demanding the payment of operational debt in respect of the default. So first they'll give the notice. After the expiry of the 10 days from the delivery of the notice or invoice demanding the payment, if the operational creditor does not receive the payment from the corporate debtor or notice of the dispute, the operational creditor may then file an application before the adjudicating authority initiating the CIRP. The first, it has to give a demand notice to the debtor, correct, and a time period of 10 days for making the payment. In the failure of, again, if the corporate debtor fails to make the payment within 10 days, then operational debtor will be commencing or can file an application for initiating the CIRP, that is Corporate Insolvency Resolution Process. Now, the operational creditor shall, along with the application, send a copy of invoice demanding payment of payment, affidavit to the effect that there is no notice given to the by the corporate debtor relating to a dispute of the unpaid operational debt, or a copy of certificate from the financial institution maintaining the accounts of the creditor confirming that no payment has been received, copy of record with information utility confirming that no payment has been received, or any proof confirming that no payment from the no payment of any unpaid operational debt by the corporate debtor. So in this case, we have to also, when you are making an application, you have to take a note that you have to attach the copy or wherein you have the demand notice, correct? When you have given the demand notice, the proof that this was delivered to the operational creditor, time period was given to the operational creditor, and you have to prove by various certificate, by way of certificate or by way of providing any other records that although during that 10 days time period, no amount unpaid, which was unpaid amount, was received from the debtor, correct? You have to prove that, and this all has to be attached with the application. Initiation of CIRP by the corporate debtor itself under section 10 of the code. So where a corporate debtor has committed a default, a corporate applicant through thereof may file an application for initiating the, so by corporate debtor itself. Now the corporate debtor who has made default is by himself filing the application for CIRP with NCLT, correct? So now the corporate applicant along with the application has to give the records of his books and accounts relating to the default, or resolution passed for appointment of interim resolution professional, right? Special resolution passed by the shareholders of the corporate debtor, wherein 3/4 of the members have approved or partners have approved for filing the application. So CIRP process is again initiated by the corporate debtor now by himself. right? So in this regards, the corporate debtor has to, while filing the application, along with that had to provide the informations relating to the books of accounts. सारे accounts उनको देने होंगे. Then they have to make sure the resolution for appointment of IRP, that is interim resolution professional, is been passed. Okay, the resolution has been passed by the shareholders of the corporate debtor, correct, regarding or majority of the 3/4 of the partners have agreed. In case of a firm, they have agreed that the application can be filed, okay, for filing the application. Now